Bon, on va commencer. Merci beaucoup d'être venu ici à Réfléchir.
So thank you very much for being here and for joining this group in order to think about today's subject. So we have people connected online, and we are here also in presence, so we will try to arrange it so that we have some recommendations for the manifesto. I will leave the floor to Roberta.
Brain is very much alive, yeah? Yeah. Okay, so thank you for coming. Thank you everyone who is online. What is this workshop about? Okay, so three things. It's about reinforcing the key role of teachers in achieving SDG 4.7. Second, it's about working around the concept of teachers as agents of change. And we have the expectation to make this very nice definition a little bit less inspirational and a bit more practical, let's say. So let's make it concrete. Let's give legs to the idea that teachers can be agents of change. And third, we would like to build on Enfants du Monde and Helpcode experience in promoting a culture of peace and non-violence in challenging contexts, so that we also bring forward the conversation that Thibaut launched this morning during the panel, and see how we can implement SDG 4.7 in a crisis context. So with these experiences, we want to start the discussion looking in particular at barriers that teachers face and that limit their capacity to promote change at local level. We want to look at tools and methodologies or approaches that can be used to promote change at local level. And we want to, of course, provide some recommendations for the manifesto to overcome these barriers using the tools, the methodologies, the approaches that we know, that we are familiar with, or that we think might work, and that we think can be relevant for the broader discussion. And so what we would like to get from you, experiences, practical ones, ideas, point of view, criticism. Does it really make sense to give yet another task to teachers that often work in very difficult environment, and tell them that they also have to be agents of change, so that they also have to contribute to change the local context towards a more peaceful and non-violent environment? Do we really want to do that? We think it's relevant because if we look at sustainability, we need, once again, to reinstate the role that teachers can have in the context where they work. But of course, we want to hear from you. So we would like to keep this conversation, it's a small group, and we would like to keep this conversation as lively as possible and as practical as possible. So please don't be shy, share your experiences, tell us what you do, what you saw, what you see, what you imagine, which leg would you give to this idea of teachers as agents of change? Because we are saying a lot of nice words that sometimes miss some practicality. And of course, okay, we are trying to do something that everyone is trying to do, but again, at least we have an objective that we want to reach. So I think I'll pass it over to Cristina, and then we can start. So we're gonna have a couple of presentations, and then we're gonna have a group conversation. In practical terms, since we are not a lot, we would like to know how many of you feel comfortable in having a smaller group discussion in English. How many of you would prefer to have small group discussion in French, and the same for the colleagues online. Hello again. So how many of you would prefer to have a small group conversation in French? Because they don't feel comfortable in having this conversation in English for any reason.
Okay. By the way, may I just interrupt 1 second?
Of course.
The microphone we have and the only image we have is through the owl. So the little object we have back here. So if you want to speak, please speak to the owls. Participants online can also hear us and see us. This is what you see. I'll show you later when you see how it presents itself. Thank you so much.
So here the answer to the question. We have only 1 minute because that would be more inclusive and participatory. And yeah, so please prepare yourself for a discussion. And Cristina, what's next?
Okay, I also said that this workshop was prepared by Enfants du Monde Helpcode. So from Enfants du Monde, there are 2 persons that are online that are, I will show you, Rufine and Dorobé. They are in chat, and they help us to prepare this workshop. And then from Helpcode, so Roberta Pellizzoli,
Yeah, but it's okay. It's okay.
Chiara Quintavalle, and Sara Bien. So we all work for this moment. Then I will go directly to this.
Moi, je n'entends pas Cristina, là.
Tu m'entends pas?
I cannot hear
Oui,
Cristina.
il faut parler un peu plus fort, sinon je n'entends pas.
Okay.
You should speak a bit louder because I cannot hear you otherwise.
Alors, je crois que la caméra fait comme ça. Il est là, donc je vais me mettre là à côté.
So I will stay close to the camera so that you can hear me better. So we will present you.
We will present to you an experience in a context of the chat. We call our presentation as how to reform pedagogical approaches, focusing on human rights. So how does it work? What does mean? And second, this one. So to see where is chat, so you see the where is chat in Africa, and then we have Manda that was from the direction of the développement et de la coopération BDC Suisse. Je ne peux pas le dire en anglais. Et on a commencé we started in 2 regions, Moyen-Chari and Bata. Then the French cooperation give also support to 2 other regions, that is Wadifira and Mandu. So there are these 4 regions where we are working now, and it's called the program for the promotion of quality of basic education. It's primary schools. Next slide. So I invite you for the workshop to let's see this Lambda teacher that we have in mind, and imagine that a teacher is a real person with emotions, with kids, with a condition of work very different. So we see this image that is, there are some moments that they have 140 children, and they have these conditions, and it's not the same that we can find in other places. So think about not a teacher as an universal person, but as some concrete embedded in a body. Yes. Then think also about that in chat we have 180 languages. So it's a multicultural place, not only languages, but so how to use this strong multicultural place, and also think about that the teachers have not professional qualifications. They have a really very low level of education. The next slide, please. And we need also to think about the pedagogical approaches. So what we found in the chat is that the most current is frontal, we say in English. So a teacher is there and teaching some specific thing, and they repeat. So it's really memorization, not critical skills at all, need analysis, need thinking. So how to bring all these other ways of teaching to this context was our concern. Next slide, please. Then we decided that Rufine, I switched to French in order they to understand to me. Rufine and Dorobé. Rufine va interviewer.
So Rufine will interview Dorobé in order to show you how they've been working on this topic that we're dealing with today, and that is to say, how can we give to teachers the tools to work in the situation of human rights. So I'm giving you the floor now.
Cristina.
Thank you very much, Cristina. Can you hear me? I hope that everyone can hear me now.
Merci beaucoup, Cristina.
So thank you very much, Cristina. We are very happy to be here in Bern from the Chad. So this is the magic of technology. And we've decided to carry out an interview, a small interview. And today I am the journalist with my colleague Dorobé. And I am Rufine Sama, and I am the pedagogical director of this program that deals with the improvement of education, of basic education in the Chad. So good morning, Mr. Doromé. Good morning, Miss. In the Chad, as well as in other African countries, some cultural practices coming from the social representation keep on being barriers to human rights. So you work in a program aiming at improving the quality of teachers and learners, and you give an important role to the change in the social representations by taking students and their communities towards more respectful practices that respect more the human rights. So can you tell us from a concrete point of view how you deal with the situation of the violation of human rights with your teachers? Thank you very much for this opportunity to share our experiences as regards the practices and as regards the promotion of human rights. As you've mentioned in your introduction, some practices and some representations from a cultural point of view are barriers
Et
to the
donc, pour
promotion
aborder ces
of human
questions-là,
rights. And in
nous
order to
évitons de
approach
les
those
aborder de manière frontale pour éviter donc
issues,
de
we
soulever des
avoid
résistances
them
auprès des
sometimes in order
communautés
to
et des
avoid
enseignants.
raising some
Alors,
resistance
nous partons donc
of
de leur
the
représentation
community
et
of
de leurs
teachers. So
pratiques
we start from their
pour pouvoir
representations and
insérer,
from their
introduire
practices in
donc
order
de
to
nouvelles connaissances, des
introduce
connaissances
new
scientifiques
knowledge
et
and
des
new
valeurs
scientific
universellement
knowledge and
partagées. Et
universal
je vais donc
values.
me baser sur un ou
So
deux
I
exemples pour vous expliquer
will
concrètement comment nous le faisons.
give you one or
Et
two
donc,
examples to show you how
je vais
we
m'appuyer donc
actually
sur
do it. So
l'image
I
qui est
will
présentée par
use
Christina qui
the
est
image
devant nous
that is
tous.
represented here.
Lorsqu'on observe cette image, on
And
voit
when
des
you
hommes,
have
des
a look at
femmes,
this
des
image, you
enfants
see some
dans
men
une
and
mare.
women and children
Et dans cette
in
mare-là, tout ce monde-là, il y en a qui
the
prennent de l'eau
water
pour boire,
source.
il y en a qui
Some
prennent de
take the
l'eau pour
water
faire
to
la
drink,
vaisselle, il y en a
some
qui prennent
take
de l'eau
it
pour faire
to
la
wash the
lessive, et
dishes,
on voit même
and
des gens
some to
en
wash
train
their
de
clothes.
puiser
And
cette eau
we
pour faire
even
le
see
jardinage, des
some
enfants en train de
people
jouer dans cette
using
eau.
it
Quelle est la
for
représentation
the
qu'ils se font de
gardening.
cela?
So what
Pour
is
eux,
this
l'eau est un don de
representation?
Dieu.
For them,
Et comme
water
étant un
is
don de Dieu, l'eau ne peut
a
pas rendre
gift
malade.
from God,
Et
and
donc,
it
nous
cannot make
partons
you
de cette
sick.
représentation
And
qu'ils
we
ont
start from this
pour apporter
representation they
donc
have
des éléments leur
in
permettant
order
donc de
to
comprendre, de
give
prendre
them new
conscience
elements to
et
understand
d'apporter
and
donc des
to be
changements. Comment nous le
aware
faisons?
of
À
the
partir
changes
donc de
that are
cette eau-là,
needed.
nous
How we
présentons
do it? How do
également
we do it?
différents types d'eau
We
pour qu'ils voient
also present
déjà
different
la
types of
qualité de l'eau
water
du
so
point de
that
vue
they can
physique.
see the quality of
Et
the water
ensuite,
from a
nous les
physical
amenons
point of view.
progressivement
And
à
then
découvrir que
we
certaines eaux
help them
sont
to
bonnes à boire,
discover that some
d'autres ne
types
le
of
sont
water
pas.
are
Parce que
drinkable
l'eau dans
and
laquelle ils
others
sont,
are
dans
not,
l'eau de
because
mare,
the
pour
water
la boire, il
in
faut quand
which
même
they
remplir un
are
certain nombre de conditions. Et donc,
in order to
nous
be
échangeons
drunk
avec eux
needs
pour
to
qu'ils voient
fulfill
selon leur pratique et
several
quand ils prennent conscience, ils se disent, mais
aspects. So
ah,
they need
si nous
to, so
n'avons
we
pas
help them
accès à
to
autre source d'eau, comment
become
nous faisons
aware
avec cette
that if they
eau-là?
don't have
Il
access
va
to
falloir
some
donc essayer
water
de
sources,
rendre au moins cette
they need
eau-là
to
concevable
make sure
avant
that this
de voir
water
avec les
can be
autorités la possibilité
drinkable,
donc d'avoir de
and
l'eau
they need also
potable.
to
Donc,
see with the
avec
authorities how
cette
to
eau,
have
les
drinkable
échanges
water.
autour donc
So
de cette
with
problématique-là,
this water, we
ils
create
arrivent
an
donc
exchange, a dialogue
à bouillir de l'eau,
around this
puisqu'ils n'ont pas autre source de l'eau,
problem,
ils
and so
arrivent donc à bouillir
they
cette
start
eau-là
to boil
et
this
donc
water
rendre
and
cette
then
eau-là consommable. Cela
make
leur
it
permet donc
drinkable.
de partir
And then they
de leur
have
représentation
they can
que
start from their
l'eau est un don
representation.
de
So that
Dieu
is
qui
to
ne peut
say
pas
that
rendre malade.
the
Et
water is a
lorsqu'ils ont
gift from
observé
God
les
that cannot
différents
make you
types
sick. But
d'eau,
then when they've
différentes
observed the
sortes d'eau
different types
avec
of
des microbes,
water
ainsi de suite, et
with
alors ils
microbes
commencent
and
par prendre
bacteria and so
conscience
on, then they
que
start
même
to
si
become
on n'a
more
pas d'autre
aware that
source d'eau, il
even
faut boire cette eau,
we don't
il
have
faut au moins
other
la rendre
sources of
consommable. Donc, ils
water.
font
We at least need to
l'ébullition de
make
cette
it
eau avant de la
drinkable. So
consommer.
this is why they
Je
then
donnerai
start to
peut-être un
boil
autre
it
exemple
before
encore,
drinking it.
celui
Then I can give
des
you
interdits
another
alimentaires.
example.
Dans nos
For
communautés,
instance,
on dit
in our
qu'un enfant ne doit pas
communities,
manger
we
l'œuf, par
say
exemple,
that a
ou bien
child
une femme ne
should
doit pas
not
manger du
eat
poulet, parce que
eggs,
si un enfant
or
mange
that
l'œuf,
women should
il
not
ne va pas
eat
pardonner, ou bien il va devenir un voleur. Alors,
chicken, because then if the child
à
eats
partir
an
de
egg,
cette
he's not going to be
représentation,
able
nous mettons
to
en
speak.
face
So
des
from this
enfants
representation,
issus des communautés qui
we
ont mangé l'œuf, mais qui parlent
also
quand même,
create
et
a dialogue with
ils arrivent
children
donc
that
à
have
prendre
been
conscience
eating
qu'en fait,
eggs and that are able to
l'œuf
speak, so
en
that
tant que
people
tel, ce
can
n'est pas parce que l'œuf
become
est fermé
aware that
qu'il va empêcher
it's
de
not
parler,
because an egg
mais
is
l'œuf
closed that
contient
you're
beaucoup
not
plus
going
des
to be
éléments
able to
nutritifs
speak, because it
et que
contains
pour que
many
l'enfant
crucial
croisse
elements
normalement,
from a
pour qu'il
nutrition
se
point of
développe
view,
normalement, il
and
va falloir
so
qu'il
they are
mange les trois
useful
types
so
d'aliments
for the
et
good
ainsi donc les
development
parents ils
of
comprennent, les communautés
children.
comprennent
And then
l'importance
parents
et
start to
alors ils
understand the
laissent la
importance
possibilité aux
of
enfants
those
donc de
types
manger
of
l'œuf,
food
le
and
poulet,
give
ainsi
the
de suite.
possibility to
Voilà
children
quelques
to eat
exemples précis que
eggs,
je voulais donner
chicken,
par
and
rapport
so
à
on.
nos pratiques.
This is one of the concrete
bien.
examples I wanted to give
Maintenant,
to you.
comme nous travaillons aussi avec les enseignants,
And we also
pour
work with
le faire,
teachers
nous mobilisons donc ces
and we also
enseignements-apprentissage-là autour
mobilize
d'un outil pédagogique
teachers
très
with
important pour nous que
another
nous avons appelé
crucial
donc une
tool
séquence
for us that
didactique.
we've called
À partir donc
a
de cette séquence
didactic
didactique,
sequence. And from
les
this
apprenants
sequence,
discutent
from this
autour de la
session,
problématique, autour de
the
leur
learner can
représentation et
talk
des
about
connaissances qu'on apporte.
the
Ils élaborent donc
representation
un projet commun
and they start to elaborate a common project that they will implement at the end of the training. And here you can see a woman who is boiling some water, and this is the concretization of this project.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Dorobé.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dorobé. There is a second question for you, because you've been, so you start from what happens in the community, and then you try to be consistent with their ways of living. And in this sense, you said that you've designed a tool for teachers that you call a didactic sequence, and the tools shape the work and those who work. So what are the training strategies that you're implementing in order to make sure that the cultural practices can evolve? Thank you once again. Our teachers have practices that are rooted, and they are used to a face-to-face way of teaching. So we actually want to put the teacher in another place, as if they were the students, in order then to elaborate a project and to compare their representation and their practices to some scientific knowledge. So thanks to this comparison, this dialogue between the two practices, then they can realize and understand the constraints of their practices, and then they choose the practices that can allow them to work in a better way. Then, when we work with teachers, and I gave you the example of water, they elaborate a project, for example, a document that explains how you can make the water drinkable when it's not drinkable. And then after during a public meeting, they try to present this document that they will share with the members of the community that are taking part to this public dialogue. And this is something that shows and that allows people to understand how to make the water drinkable, but also to the community. So the community that was drinking water that was not clean, then start to become aware that water needs to be drinkable. So they also participate to some activities. They're not just receiving the knowledge, but they participate through dialogues, and then they are able to design the project that will be implemented. And so they can learn new ways of doing, of working, and they work not only in the school, but they also share their knowledge with their community. Then we've started from the cultural practices and from the social representations, and then step by step, the community can feel that their practices, that they can open to the new values, to some values that are to the other communities. Thank you very much, Mr. Dorobé. Before we close this interview, I would like to make a brief summary of what we've been saying. In a concrete way, you try to contextualize the narrative of human rights. So you try to contextualize it through what we've called the didactic sequences, and this tool can transform the position of the teacher on human rights through a dialogue on social and cultural practices, and without judging those social practices and those cultural practices. And you also implement projects
permet ou contribue donc
that can
faire
contribute
évoluer ces
to
pratiques culturelles
an
chez les
evolution of
apprenants
those
et
cultural
chez
practices
dans
among
au sein de leur
learners
communauté.
and among
Voilà donc,
teachers in their
chers
communities.
participants,
So, dear
quelques mots de
participants,
l'interview et
these
de
were some
l'expérience
few
du chat
words
que nous avons voulu partager
regarding
avec
the experience in
Cristina,
chat
tu
that
as
we
la
wanted to
parole.
share with you. Cristina, you have the floor. I don't know if you have some questions for Dorobé before we switch to another presentation. So we had two examples. I'm sorry, it's quite hard to hear from there. So on traditional examples that were rooted in their cultural practices, are there some traditional examples that you could share that are positive regarding the health, for instance?
On répond en même temps ou on prend toutes les questions? On peut aller?
Shall we answer now or after anyone have asked their questions?
Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation.
Thank you
Je
very
sais
much
pas
for
si je
this
n'ai pas
presentation.
bien
I
compris,
don't
mais
know,
je
maybe
me
there are
demande
some
un
things
peu
that I
dans quelle
haven't
manière
understood,
vous
but was
travaillez ici
wondering
avec
in which
le
way you also
gouvernement
work
du
with
district, dans
the
cette
government of the
teachers
district
education,
in
éducation des
this
enseignants. Quel est le
teacher's
lien
education.
avec le
What is the
système dans ce
link
sens?
with the system in this way? Another question. Yes, maybe a more complex question, not only for the chat, but in our countries in general. One of the fields in which we really have the question of human rights is in the relationship between men and women, so the gender relationship. Have you been able to develop something in this way as well? Other questions?
Okay, donc, Rufine, c'est pas question. Et Dorobé,
Can you two answer to those questions?
Tu arrives à répondre en 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Maybe in 2 or 3 minutes.
Ok, on va aller très rapidement.
Yes, so we will try to be as quick as possible. We've been talking about the training of teachers, but we go through the system itself to provide the training to teachers. We go through the national system through the existing trainers. We've already been talking about the teachers, but we also have trainers and trainers of trainers. So we work along the whole education channel. So we don't have some parallel systems. And then as regards the gender questions, we have developed didactic sequences on what we've are on so a didactic sequence that shows how during menstruations, for instance, some girls cannot go to school because they feel shame, or they are considered as not pure. So we also tried to work on this in order to make sure that girls can keep on going to school during the menstruation. And then I think there was another question question regarding the positive elements
qui facilite, c'est ça, hein?
that
Les
can
éléments culturels
facilitate,
positifs
so the
qui
cultural,
facilitent quand
the
même
positive
l'accès, par
cultural
exemple,
elements that can ease
l'accès aux
and
centres
can
de santé, c'est
facilitate
ça? Si
access
j'ai bien
to
compris.
city to health
Voilà.
centers, if my question, if I understand
Voilà. Nous
correctly.
savons qu'il y a,
So we
il y a des
know
pratiques
that
culturelles.
there are some
Les matrones,
cultural
par exemple,
practices,
hein, des connaissances endogènes. Il y a
so
tout ça qui
indigenous
existe.
knowledge that
Et
exists.
comme l'a dit Dorobé, que nous
And
mettons
as
en
Dorobé
dialogue
said,
avec ce
since
qui
we
se passe
have
au niveau du
a
centre de santé.
continuous dialogue with what
Et donc, c'est dans ce
is
dialogue-là
happening
que
also in
très
the
rapidement, ils
health
comprennent que
centers, in
le
this
centre de
way
santé
we can
représente
understand,
aussi
people can understand that
comme
the health
les connaissances
center
endogènes, comme chez
is also a
le
place where some
praticien,
indigenous
ce qu'on va
knowledge
chercher.
are
Donc, ils comprennent ça et
well
ils
known.
fréquentent vraiment,
So this
ils
is
fréquentent les
why
centres de
they
santé.
go
Voilà
there
ce que je peux dire. Je ne sais pas si Dorobé a
easily.
quelques explications.
This is why I don't know if
Non,
Dorobé
par
wants to
rapport
add
au
something.
dernier aspect, je voulais
Well,
juste
as
ajouter
regards the last aspects,
ce
I just
travail a
wanted to
fait en
add
sorte que
that
il y a
this
même
work
complémentarité
made sure that there
entre
was a
les matrons
complementarity
et
between the
les
matron
centres de
and
santé. De manière
between
à ce
the
que
health
lorsque une
centers,
femme
so that
habite très loin
when
d'un
a
centre de santé, par
woman lives
exemple,
very far from a health
quand il y a un peu de
center,
difficulté, rapidement la
when
matrone appelle le centre de santé
so the
pour
matron can call the
venir
health
rapidement prendre
center
en charge
to take her,
cette parturiente.
to
Donc,
take
c'est
care
cette
of this
complémentarité-là.
woman.
Ça fait que
So
si
there is a
seulement au départ
complementarity.
on avait négligé en disant non, 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 les
And
pratiques
at the beginning
des
we said
matrones
no,
n'est
though
pas
the
bonne,
the
immédiatement il y aura une
practices
barrière. Or,
of
en
the
faisant
matron
dialoguer,
are not
ça ouvre
good,
donc la
then
possibilité
actually
pour
we
les deux
are
parties de
able to
travailler
create
de
a
commun accord
dialogue
et le taux de
between
fréquentation dans les
both
centres de
parts in order
santé
to
augmente.
work together. And this is why the number of people going to these health centers increases.
Alors, on va donc, merci beaucoup pour
Thank you very much
réponses.
for
Donc,
your
on
answers.
va passer
We will now
présentation
switch
de
to the the presentation of Helpcode.
And it's about, well, we wanted to invite the Mozambican teachers we work with into this workshop, but we couldn't handle the translation from Portuguese to English and French. So, so we have a video. We have a video, and this is a video that basically narrates what has been done in a central district of, in a district in a central province of Mozambique for the past 6 years. And it's from the teachers that have been involved themselves. So I hope this gives you an idea. I'm gonna do a little bit of, give a little bit of comments just afterwards. And then I think we can start our discussion. So the video is in Portuguese, but we have subtitles and translation in French as well.
Os conflitos sempre, por onde passam, deixam muitos danos e deixam muitos traumas. E para que haja uma aprendizagem é necessário que o aluno esteja emocionalmente e fisicamente com boa saúde.
Então, tivemos alunos pessoas que deslocaram-se de Casabanana, de Funduzi para aqui. E a sua forma de aprender e de aquisição na sala de aula não era igual como os outros.
Cuando llegamos en Gorongosa, entendemos que era imposible hablar tanto en forma directa quanto indireta da experiência do conflito armado. Então, tivemos que ampliar a concepção e a visão do conflito até reconhecê-lo como uma dinâmica fundamental das relações humanas. E por isso falamos de vários conflitos com os quais os professores e as professoras lidam cotidianamente.
Porque a mente da criança está muito fora daí. Está em casa, lá o que aconteceu, presenciou conflito entre o pai e a mãe, presenciou uma coisa triste na zona e ela vem com aquilo sempre, vem traumatizada.
Para as meninas, a escola não é muito relevante para os pais. Eles preferem priorizar os rapazes em relação às meninas.
Porque antes a rapariga só ficava limitado naquilo de que o trabalho de uma rapariga é ir na escola até saber escrever o seu nome. Daí em diante tem que largar a situação da escola porque tem que ir no casamento. É essa mentalidade que a nossa comunidade tinha.
Então, dali, nós começamos a ter muitos instrumentos de trabalho, como o teatro, as poesias, os desenhos e o diálogo, sobretudo, com o aluno.
Para além disso, fui aprender que, afinal de contas, não sou professora para dar ordens quando estou na minha comunidade, assim, dentro dos meus colegas, mas de uma forma pacífica. Podemos usar a conversa, o diálogo para a resolução de alguns conflitos que temos passado.
Mas agora, com tudo que a gente está a implementar, a mentalidade da comunidade já é outra.
Conseguimos, através dos teatros, sensibilizar a comunidade.
E durante os teatros, nós temos pedido a intervenção dos pais para pôr-se no lugar do oprimido e dar sua sugestão de como poderia agir se fosse sua filha sendo oprimida. Então, eles sentem-se mais envolvidos e aí começam a ver que, de fato, há uma vantagem quando se vai à escola. Mesmo para aquelas crianças que não tinham oportunidades de ir para a escola, que em algum momento os pais impediam para que elas fossem à escola, elas agora lutam pelo seu direito.
Quando escolhemos o lema A Paz é um Processo, é porque nós entendemos que a mudança é um processo. Isso se expressou ao longo de 6 anos e com formas concretas, por exemplo, a passagem de professores para professores pesquisadores, ou seja, professores comprometidos em ouvir as vozes, as palavras e os pontos de vista das pessoas diferentes que compõem a comunidade. E depois, o último passo, de professores ativistas, ou seja, professores capazes de assumir realmente um engajamento perante a sociedade.
A própria comunidade agora já trabalham diretamente com os professores, participam nas atividades educativas, participam nas nossas palestras que nós temos feito nas escolas. Então, buscamos mais a comunidade que estava distante e trouxemos a escola para trabalharmos juntos, em estreita ligação.
Porque durante esse tempo mudou muita coisa na história da vida de Gorongosa. Eu acho que se todo o povo, toda Gorongosa pensássemos de como nós passamos a pensar depois das formações, nós teríamos um Gorongosa muito diferente daquele Gorongosa dos anos atrás.
Through this, what we call this peace education project, started to play this role bridge between the school community and the children's families and the community stakeholders, addressing local conflicts, and I'm going into that right now, addressing local conflict by using participatory tools such as theater of the oppressed, legislative theater, dance, music, drawing, play. They started poetry clubs, they started chess clubs, they started collecting traditional oral history from the eldest people of the community. So they did a step forward in their role as teachers in a very, very complex environment, actually. And they started to see themselves as someone who could actually promote peaceful, non-violent solution to local conflict. And what was interesting here is that, as you probably saw, this project started in the final part of a real conflict that happened in Gorongosa. But what we realized was that that conflict was something people didn't want to talk about. That conflict was a given. It was there, you know, everyone knew that it was there. What was more important to rebuild the community after the armed conflict was to work on the local conflicts that affect people's daily life, because that were something tangible, that those conflicts were something that people could actually address themselves. One of the conflicts that you maybe get from the video is the conflict between the families and the schools with regards to sending girls to school. And this is something really, you know, that happens every day. Every day the teachers have to go and talk to our parents and say, look, this girl is 10, she should come to school, why isn't she coming? And then the parents say, well, she's going to get married next week. And then, you know, so that's, the perception was that actually teachers, the perception that the same teacher said was that they couldn't do anything about the armed conflict and the heritage and the consequences of that conflict, but they could do something about the local conflicts that people live in their daily lives. What are they left with? I mean, this project has come to an end in July. So now we have a group of teachers that continues to bring forward these peace education activities in their school. Many of them do not require specific funding. It's theater, you can do it like, you can do it here, you can do it everywhere. Poetry club, you just need pieces of papers and pens and to have time to stay together. They also participate in community meetings because they are considered as actors that can support the community meetings when there's something to be discussed. But what are the challenges, which is the big part here? First thing is that teachers in Mozambique, as I think in many other parts of the world, receive a very, very, very small salary. And it really takes guts to go beyond what you already have to do as a teacher in your daily job. So it's really about, you know, this project has gone on for 6 years, and the group of teachers we worked with, they decided to be part of the group. They weren't, you know, like they applied for and they participated actively throughout the whole duration. But it was a lot of work because, as you can imagine, we had to discuss with the local institution not to send them away somewhere else. So it was complicated. So salary is an issue. Does it make sense? Is it worth it? You know, having a regular contract, which is not often the case. How is the role of teacher perceived and promoted in the education strategies of the Mozambican government or any other government? In Mozambique, for the first time last year, in the education in emergency strategy, peace education and the role of teacher was mentioned, which was like groundbreaking. It's the first time that it happens. But how do you promote peace education during an emergency when the priority number one that you have is to take children to school, or, you know, like make sure that children lose as as little days of school as possible. And then the first challenge is, what is the social recognition that teachers have? In this context and in many other contexts that we know, the teachers are not recognized as role models for many reasons, including because, for example, in this place, teachers are perceived as resourceless. They gain so little that even parents who are farmers say to their children, you don't want to become a teacher, do you? Because being a teacher is uncool, you know? Like it's not something that it's not a good perspective in life. You gain so little that becoming a teacher seems almost something unsuccessful to do. And this has to be combined with the series of other problems that we all know, that is violence towards children that sometimes is perpetrated by teachers, or the fact that they have to teach 120 pupils in one class. So you see, you know, that there's a broader issue of social recognition of the role of the teacher that needs to be, well, brought on the table. So I'm stopping here. I just want to end with a question or with a proposal, which is try to look at all these problems from another angle and see if there is any space, or do we see any space to promote the role of teachers, the role of local teachers in peace building processes and in education to peace, and ensure that this role is systematically ensured. So how do we do that? Because if we look at sustainability of SDG 4.7, we need to recognize that local teachers need to play a role. There isn't always a cooperation project over there. There isn't always support from a big donor. I mean, they are those who do school every day. The school happens because teachers are there. It's not because cooperation is there. So how do we, what do we do? How do we support teachers? And it's a pity that they're not there, they're not here. But yes, that would be my contribution. I don't know if there is any question or comment. And otherwise we can start the conversation and try to answer these questions. But I stop because I talk too much.
I just ask one thing, where do their salaries come from? Is it coming from the federal government or the regional government, or?
They come from the national government. Yeah. So they're paid at provincial level, but that comes from the budget of the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not supplemented by any other type of activities or streams of funding?
Well, in this specific project, the incentive was that teachers had 4 huge training. By huge, I mean like a couple of weeks training for 4 times. And so this was during the school break, and they received a per diem to attend the training. And then during the COVID pandemic, they realized participatory action research, and so they had credit for their mobile phone to communicate with each other and to bring forward this activity. But no, they get a salary from the state, and that's basically it, and we provide for them with the per diem when they have specific activities. And the salary is around $100 to $170 per month, which is very, very little considering the cost of life in Mozambique nowadays, and the technical experience and the years of occupation.
So we will start to think about 2 questions. We will have one group that will be online with Rufine in French, and then the people that are in line that will prefer to exchange in English will stay with us in this meeting, because we will have one group discussion in English. So the first question is, when does a teacher become an agent of change? And as Roberta said, practically, what this person do or must do, or what is concretely this how answer this question. And the second one is, what are the strategies to support teachers to become agents of change? So I think that we must say hello to the online group. And we can, so we have 5 minutes, Roberta, to have both. So yes, let's hear from Rufine. Rufine, please tell us how it works, your reflection, and if you have some recommendation that you came with.
Alors, nous avons désigné Agnès.
So we nominated Agnès to present what are our recommendations. So I will leave the floor to Agnès in order to present it.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
I will now turn into English. Would it be possible to share my screen because I've used the Jamboard? Can you see it? Is it fine?
She is looking for the Jamboard to put here. Yes.
Can you see my screen? Well, the first question was what is a teacher being an agent for change? So the first answer we've been giving was that the teacher shall be a model in the way he or she is acting. Second, that the teacher shall be also the change that he or she is teaching. Another participant said that the teacher shall be convinced by what he or she is teaching. Now, concerning the second questions, what could be the recommendations to help the teachers to become agent for change? So first suggestion was about integrating the traditional knowledge to the curricula. Second suggestion was about introduction to the question of human rights in the trainings for teachers. Other suggestion was about to give the proper tools to the teachers, tools in the sense of elements regarding the context that will help them to be efficient in their lessons, and to help also the teachers, to guarantee the teachers some legitimate spaces outside the walls of the school to facilitate the transmission of knowledge. And last but not least, we were giving another example on how to talk about the human rights using some mathematics, for instance, biology, and very specific issues regarding gender, for instance, talk about human rights.
Merci beaucoup à Agnès. Elle a été fidèle. Hein?
Thank you very much. And yes, you've been quite faithful to what have been said.
Rufine, colleagues online, we want to share a draft definition of what we discussed here. We are using a lot of keywords that, you know, like should require a lot more words. But what we came up with is that teachers can become agents of change when they are empowered and can work in an enabling environment, that the public system is strengthened, where there is increased coordination at all levels, and where teachers, students, communities, and institutions can work together. And now we are going to take also your recommendation and put everything together. And hopefully have something for the manifesto.
So, Rufine, did you have the translation of what said? Did you have translation? Rufine, est-ce que vous avez eu la traduction? No.
I did translate.
Est-ce que vous avez entendu la recommandation du groupe en français ou seulement en anglais?
Oui.
Ah, en français, ok.
Oui, bien sûr.
Ok.
Alors, nous avons eu votre traduction de la définition.
Yes, we had the translation of the definition of this teacher as an agent of the change, and in this definition, well, here we have directly tackled the main goal, while you've talked about the strategy to reach it. So what are the different elements that need to be implemented in order to have teachers as agents of change?
And 3:30 sharp.
Merci pour la participation active.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we are going to write this nicely and deliver it to the second.
Il y a un point.
Oui, vas-y.
Ouais. Non, en fait, il y a un point qui est
Actually, there is another point that emerged from our discussion, which we would like to share with you so that you can include it in your recommendations. This morning, people said that we should not overload the teachers as if we had to add knowledge. But what we've shared during our discussion is that we are not adding knowledge, but the disciplinary knowledge are implemented from the content regarding human rights. So from the content of human rights, we can approach the discipline. And if we, in this case, it does not become something that we are adding, but a new organization. So we have been used to an education system that gives the disciplinary knowledge without relating them to some issues related to the life of learners. So I think we should highlight this as the contribution of our panel.